Okay, welcome everyone to my continuation of what are my favorite theorems, my very biased collection as usual. Today I would like to talk about kind of a philosophy of a type of a theorem with a very, very prominent example, but I won't go too much into details with a prominent example. That can wait for a little bit longer, but I would like to talk about kind of this idea of that there's an axiom system, and an axiom system is usually never perfect, and there will be statements which are true in the axiom system, and there will be statements that are false in the axiom system, but there might even be statements that are not decidable in the axiom system. And these are the independent results. So what are independent results? And it's most prominent in, let's say, classical set theory. So what people started to study about 100 years ago in an axiomatic way, but it's not necessarily restricted to those. And I'm kind of trying to draw more like the big picture, so kind of a big idea related to model theory and logic and how that will work. And in some sense it's saying that whatever kind of statement is independent of your axioms, or maybe your axioms is the set of rules you set yourself for how the world works, and so everything that is not that is not provable, so it's actually really independent, is somehow neither true nor false. So it's true and it's also not true. And kind of the fun in the game is then if you have such a statement, you can kind of always find the correct model where it is true, and you can always find the model where it's wrong. And that's kind of the point of an independence result. But I will make it kind of as simple as possible, and I will just go with this idea that there is a set of axioms, and it could mean many, many things. The Peano axioms for the natural numbers, set of axioms. Group axioms for a group, some very simple. So group axioms, they don't give you really much. There are not so many axioms. So it's not a very rich theory, but it's a theory of axioms. The Peano arithmetic, Peano axioms are way richer, but it's kind of the same type of flavor that I want to like to discuss. You have a certain set of rules, and you're trying to see whether a statement makes sense in your rules or not. And maybe the most famous one, Temelo-Frankel axioms, and let's just include choice. So C is usually choice here. So the set theory axioms. So the point of the set theory axioms is a little bit like they should model all of mathematics, while of course the group theory axioms should not model all of mathematics, but rather groups. That's the whole point. So depending a little bit on the flavor you want, you will get different results. And independence for group axioms might not be super interesting, but it's kind of the same type of idea. So in some sense, it's historically speaking, at least in hindsight, a little bit surprising that independence results were so groundbreaking new, because there are many of them. Actually, there are really many, but maybe for set theory, people believed for a long time that it models all of mathematics. So in everything that should be provable, that it is true, should be provable as well. But that's not just not true. So in some sense, the set axioms just don't model all of mathematics. That's kind of the point. Anyway, so the axiom system is kind of the abstract point, and there are models on the other side, which are kind of incarnations of the axioms. For the Peano axioms, it could mean the natural numbers, or really real-world objects that mimic the natural numbers. I only have 3 apples here. That would be the number 3. I would need a few more apples for the other numbers, but I think you get the point. And similarly for the group axioms, every group, so my symmetric group here S4, with 3 generators and some relations, is an example of a model of the group axiom. So every explicit group is an example, is a model of a group axiom. And the groups may arise abstractly, like on this side, or like symmetry groups of some object, or whatever. And in set theory, well, kind of because everyone kind of believed that set theory kind of models all of mathematics, the models usually are called universes. So here's maybe a more modern picture of a universe. Here's a slightly older picture of a universe, kind of a very funny picture of a universe with underworld, the Earth, and the stars. Anyway, so whatever the universe is, so there will be all different kind of models of the axioms, but it kind of applies very generally. So you have some axiom system, and mathematics builds everything on axiom systems. And we are looking for explicit models of the axioms. The problem is, the point is, if you find a model, you are sure kind of that the axiom systems won't collapse in a certain sense, right? So if you just write down random axioms, the chances are very, very high, like essentially one that your axiom system actually contains some contradiction and will just collapse into nothingness. But for the group axioms, guess what? The group axioms don't contain a contradiction, and well, a real-world group is a model of it and kind of proves that it can't contain a contradiction. But we will do something different here with the models, but we will certainly play those sides against one another. Okay, so whatever truth is, well, I don't know. Let's just define truths to be whatever can be proven from our axioms, right? We fix now an axiom system, and truth is whatever can be proven from our axioms. So there are certainly certain statements that just follow from the axioms. A very popular one, and here's an illustration. I'm not sure in this case whether the illustration is actually better than the proof, which I'm going to write down as an abstract proof that I'm going to write down, but there is an illustration. Anyway, so it's the famous uniqueness of the unit in the groups. So without having that assumption, you can prove from the axioms that the unit is unique, and it's usually very simple. Just assume that you have a different one, E and E prime. Then by the unit axioms, this is E prime because one of them is a unit, and this is also E because the other one is a unit as well, and you're done. And this is illustrated here, and now you can decide yourself whether you like the illustration or the simple one-line proof. The point is they are true statements, and like this one, a very simple one, obviously. And they are just true in all models because they are true in the axiom system. You just derive them abstractly in the axiom system, and they are true in all models, kind of by construction. So for every group, in this case, for example, for every group, there's a unique unit. We know that because we can just prove that by just writing down, just following the axioms. Well, that's pretty cool, actually. If you think about it for a second, it's pretty cool. And the converse, the converse if you want, the converse of truth would be, of course, whatever is false, but kind of a funny flavor is independence. And independence is a statement such that you will find the model where X is true, so let me say X is a statement, and you will find another model where not X is true. Because that means you can neither prove X nor not X in your axiom system. So you can neither prove X nor not X in your axiom system. And here's a little example from group theory again, trying to keep that as easy as possible. So let's say our statement that I just call Y, because I just repeated it here and not to confuse it with the general X, anyway, is there exists an element, not the unit, of finite order. That's independent of the group axioms. You cannot prove it, and you cannot prove its negation. And why is that? Because, well, here's a group, it's the integers, and in the integers, you don't have any element of finite order. So the Y statement is not true, right? Does not follow from the group axioms. And conversely, there are groups like here, this is just the cyclic group with 6 elements. Well, it's just a cyclic group, the cycle group. In the cycle group, every element has an order of 6, except the unit. So everything is of finite order, and the statement is true. And this means that, well, you have a model where the statement is not true, and you have a model where the statement is true. And this means you cannot prove the statement itself nor its negation in the axioms. So this is a very simple example of a statement that is independent, in this case, from the group axioms. And as I said, the group axioms are not super exciting, and you will find 1,012 different statements that are independent of the group axioms. You just need two groups satisfying the axiom, satisfying the statement, and you need another group not satisfying the statement, and you're already good. And you're trying to do the same for any axiom system. You can do that in any axiom system, and if you find such a statement, so you find two models such that the statement is true or the statement is false, you have found a statement which is independent of the axiom system. And the most popular example of this was the continuum hypothesis of in set theory. It's independent of, well, set theory. Just as a reminder, the continuum hypothesis just says there are no cardinalities between n and r. That's just it. So there are two infinite sets that we know very well, the natural numbers and the real numbers. The real numbers are super large, much larger than the natural numbers, and you can ask whether there's something in between. And the continuum hypothesis, or continuum conjecture, maybe whatever you want to call it, says there is no such set, and you simply can't decide that. And that was one of Hilbert's open problems. So Hilbert had a list of 23 problems published about 120 years ago. Really, really successful. This idea of giving the math community open problems that are interesting. And this one was number one on the list. So can you prove it, or maybe you can disprove it? And turns out you can do neither because it's independent. And this is pretty cool. So Gödel took a while. So Hilbert was around 1900, and it took a while. And Gödel kind of proved that the continuum hypothesis is true in some model. And a little bit later, that's kind of not so hard, because kind of, if your universe, your model doesn't have enough sets, then clearly there is no set between n and r. So that's kind of the easy part. And the harder part is proven 23 years later, namely the negation. That's also the model where the negation holds. And then you're kind of done. So it's Gödel and Cohen here. It's quite a classical result by now, but it was really, really shocking because Hilbert had this idea of, and many people followed Hilbert. So Hilbert was a giant of wir müssen wissen, wir werden wissen. So essentially the idea that everything that is true should be provable in set theory. So and here you have a statement that's neither true nor false in some sense, or that is true in some model and is false in some model. Is kind of a very, very messy thing in some sense. And it is much more impressive and much harder than proving my little toy examples here in group theory, but it's kind of the same type of flavor. I just had an awesome idea. Suppose that there aren't any infinities between the cardinalities of naturals and reals. Okay, what would that imply? I don't know, because it doesn't imply anything, because it's just kind of a statement that is really neither true nor false. So if you want, for example, you can now add this as an axiom without contradicting anything. But this was really, really a crucial breakthrough, because before that, people believed that essentially everything is somehow provable. And this was kind of, there was some work before, mostly by Gödel and some collaborators or colleagues maybe, and this was kind of the last that just killed it and solved the first problem in some way. Not really solved, because Hilbert's question was more like, prove it, and this is not saying like, oh, I can't, but I also can't prove its converse. Anyway, so independence results are really, really popular in mathematics, and actually the real important, historically speaking, independent results is even older than the one from Gödel and Cohen. And it goes back to, well, the axiom systems of Euclid. And nobody can doubt that the axiom systems of Euclid are very, very important. It's like 2,000 years old or something, in kind of the plane geometry. And there was always the statement about the parallel lines, the parallel postulate, whatever it is. And it's just so much more complicated sounding than the other statements that people try to prove it from the axioms. But it turns out that you can't. And it was proven as follows. So the proof that this is an independent result, so the parallel postulate is independent from the other axioms of Euclid. Well, you need to prove that it holds in some model. That's not hard. That's Euclidean geometry, and that's kind of known for since the early days of humans, I guess. And much later, essentially based on work of Gauss, like Gauss again, I didn't publish it, like, oh, it's not perfect, I don't publish it. Anyway, let me contribute it to Gauss. Much later, proved actually that the converse holds in some model, like in spherical geometry, for example, the converse is true, so it doesn't hold. And this is again an independent result, which in some sense historically was more important than the other one, but they're all kind of the same type of flavor, and I hope that was reasonably clear. in this video, namely that you have some axiom system and everything such as you find a model where it's true and where it's not true is independent. And depending on your axiom system, that might be a really cool result and a crucial result or not, like group theory. Nobody believes that group theory axioms model mathematics. So obviously you will have 1 billion different statements that are independent. But set theory, that's very different. So kind of up to the 1920s, I would say, probably most people believe that set theory models all of mathematics, and then it kind of slowly fell apart. And nowadays it's really the opposite, and you have a whole zoo of statements that are independent from the classical axioms of set theory. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I also hope to see you next time.